Morning, America. I'm on the road. I'm going to try to focus more on the road, but I got some thoughts that I just wanted to share. My buddy, Survivalist Dan, and myself, we had this conversation for, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and we talked about all kind of things. And, you know, when we have these kind of conversations, it's like, it's so weird how we can zero in on things and how we can kind of get down to like brass tacks of, you know, our thoughts, right? So in a lot of way, what's up, Rob Adams? I'm actually glad you're here, because this conversation is kind of in your alley too. So gun control is a big thing. Bullying's a big thing. People projecting their morality is a big thing. And I just want to share some of the thoughts that from the conversation we had, because I thought it was really enlightening, and we actually tried to think from other people's perspectives, which not enough people actually try to do anymore. Everybody's so rooted in their own base that they can't see the forest from the trees. Anyway, here's the thing: you're not ever going to there's going to be there's no gun ban that's going to happen in the United States of America. First and foremost, that's not ever going to happen. If so, then I promise you the black market has probably close to 1 billion weapons ready to distribute at any minute. If you outlaw weapons, then everyone's going to become outlaws. That's just that. So my buddy Dan and I were talking and discussing, everybody talks about common sense gun reform, right? So he actually had a solution that I thought was brilliant, and I want to share it with you guys. The government basically wants to do a thing where if somebody calls and says that red flag kind of thing, like, oh, my husband's crazy because I'm leaving him, he's got guns and he's claiming he's going to kill everybody. The government wants to issue a thing where they basically confiscate your weapons. Then you have to go into legal procedures and all this, that, the third. It could take years. It could actually take years. And it could be some bullshit where, your wife's jealous or your girlfriend's jealous, or vice versa. It could be the dude calling on the woman and basically screw up everything for that person. I mean, let's face it, dude. There's been a lot of instances where the woman calls in for a domestic violence charge and it's really BS, and they go in and take your weapons, and you're stuck with a domestic charge, and you'll never get your rights back. All right, so here, why not do this? Here's the thing. The way I see it, if the police come to your house and they confiscate your weapons, I see that as being burden of proof on the state. So if you want to talk simple, common sense gun reform, let's focus on mental health. First and foremost, the thing about mental health, man, is mental health is kind of like, AIDS back in the 90s. Like all of a sudden everybody just stopped talking about it as if you can't get AIDS anymore, when it used to be everywhere. When Magic Johnson first was diagnosed with AIDS, everybody talked about AIDS all the time, and AIDS awareness and these kind of things. And they used to talk about mental health in the same way, but nobody talks about mental health anymore because it's not politically correct to acknowledge that people have malfunctions, that people have mental deficiencies. Now, being that I understand that people do have mental deficiencies, and if you need proof, just look at how many drugs Pfizer's pushing out into the country. You know what I mean? Look at how much Ritalin, how much Prozac, how much Zoloft, how much Ambien and Seroquel and all these other things they're shoving down people's throats to fix their problems. I personally, my mom tried to send me to a psychiatrist when I was young, and they wanted to put me on medication. I told my mom and I told the psychiatrist to go F themselves. I'm not taking anything. They're my problems. I'll sort them out. And luckily I did. It took time, but it happened. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So here's the thing. Why are people afraid to acknowledge the fact that we have kids that have been cutting themselves forever? They're cutters, dude. They sit in their little room at their house and like cut themselves because they're depressed or whatever. Nobody wants to talk about that anymore. Nobody wants to shed light on that anymore. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that that there's issues with these kids out here. There is bullying, and I'm gonna get to that in a minute, because we actually had some really valid points about bullying, and it's gonna blow your mind. But the thing is all right, let's talk simple gun reform. This is what I suggest. It was really Dan's idea. I think it's phenomenal. I do think that it's a two-edged sword. You got, on one side, you've got people that are like, don't mess with my liberty, don't mess with my freedom. I get that. I'm a true 2A supporter. You all know that. And then on the other side, you got people that say nobody's doing anything, nobody cares, everybody's murderers. So here's one concept that I can actually adhere to. If someone makes a phone call and says, little Johnny's like, going into rage. He's talking about killing people at a school, etc., etc. And the government, unfortunately, right? Police, things like that. If they do nothing, then everybody's mad about that. But then on the other hand of that, if they take your weapons and you got to go into a legal battle that could take years, everybody's mad about that. So Dan's solution, and I actually agree to this, if you know that your kid's got issues, and other people know that your kid or your mom or your dad or your aunt or your uncle all have these issues, then I do believe that the government, aka police, whatever you want to call it, should intervene. Because if they do nothing, they're the bad guys. However, I don't think that they should put this person into a predicament that puts them into a situation that they have to hire attorneys and go through legal process and battles for years. So what it boils down to is, I think if they send the troops in and the troops disarm somebody, then basically you have 90 days. And I think it's the burden of the state that needs to prove it. So like, I think the state should also pay for it. So if this person needs to do psych evaluations, if they need to like be assessed in any way, shape, or form, then the state should pay for it. Now, if the person's cleared and you know, they're proven not to be a problem, then they get their rights back. It's not something they have to fight for years. Robert Walker, I do whatever I want. Stop being a jealous hater. But you know, the other thing too, man, is let's talk about bullying for a minute. You know, when I was a kid, you got bullied for being too soft. You got bullied for being a punk. There wasn't nobody you could run to. Not even your own parents. Nobody in the school system. Nothing like that. You literally had to man up and do everything on your own. Which means you had to ball up your own fists and fight. And I also grew up in a time where all the boys in the backwoods of North Carolina had shotguns and their shotgun racks in the back of their truck. They would fist fight each other, go in those trucks and go home. So here's the thing. It's easier for me to hold it like this, but the funny thing is, the left, right? The left is actually one of the biggest bullies on the planet. They cry bully, right? If you're not a follower and you don't share their hive mentality and follow the pack, then you're bullied for that. If you're not politically correct enough, you're bullied for that. If you're a gay Trump supporter, well, then obviously you're not gay enough for some reason, and they bully you for that. The funny thing about the left is they cry about stop bullying, right? And the thing is this Cruz kid, you know, he had $1 million. I didn't know that. His parents left him $1 million. And they said that he was heavily bullied. And the problem is in the school system, what I'm getting at is we have a culture issue. We have a culture problem going on. And again, nobody wants to actually address nor have a conversation or debate about that. Why? Because it admits that we have an issue. It admits that we collectively as a society have a problem. And the left can't stand to acknowledge problems because it actually punctures a hole in their false utopia. You see, people like myself that have been to prison, that moved out of their house, their mommy and daddy's house when they were 16, I've actually been through it all. I've had guns put in my face. I've had my door kicked in. I've been robbed. You know what I mean? Like, I've been robbed during broad daylight at City Park. I mean, I've been through all kinds of scenarios. So the truth of the matter is, we have a cultural issue. And Dan brought up a really valid point, man. He's like, you remember the show Fresh Prince of Bel-Air with Will Smith or whatever? You know, Uncle Phil always tried to correct, you know, Will Smith, or, well, I can't remember what his name was. I guess it was Will Smith on the show. But Uncle Phil, he had an Uncle Phil. We had Leave It to Beaver. We had I Love Lucy. We had, you know, all these shows that basically tried to show you how to be a decent person. And it glorified the parents in their efforts to raise good kids. You remember that? I mean, if you're old enough, you remember it. Nowadays, we glorify Catch Me Outside. Nowadays, we glorify kids beating up on their parents. Nowadays, we glorify WorldStarHipHop.com. Now we glorify, you know, 8 people jumping one person as long as it's being videoed. It's awesome. So there's no conversation about our cultural issues that are taking place. The funny thing is if you have those conversations, then you're bullied by the left. It's funny because I remember, you know, situations where the left were screaming, oh, we got to stop bullying, we got to stop bullying, and then you go to this page or whatever, and it's nothing but the left over there just bashing people. You know what I mean? The funny thing is at what point do we stop claiming left or right and start claiming human being? You dig what I'm saying? Like seriously, like at what point do we all step the fuck back and say, wait a minute, I've never aligned myself perfectly with conservative. I've never aligned myself perfectly with anything in life because I'm a human being. I have faults. I have character defects. I have it all. I have it all, but I'm man enough to admit it. But nobody else seems to want to admit this shit. You know what I mean? Like that we're dealing with in our society. We're raising kids that are 100% cookie cutter followers. And, you know, we used to actually promote children being leaders, children thinking outside the box, telling them it's okay to be different from one another and to actually think for themselves. Remember your dad used to always tell you, well, if he jumped off a bridge, would you? If you know, like when you got in trouble and your friend did something, you did it because your friend did it and it was peer pressure, and your dad would always tell you, well, if he jumped off a bridge, would you? But nowadays, we actually have a conglomerate of kids out here that would possibly jump off the bridge because that's the in thing to do. That's what's hip. That's what's cool. That's what's in with the in crowd, because the left promotes the in crowd instead of thinking like an individual. They promote the hive mentality. And then you wonder how we get in these situations. You dig what I'm saying? Like, it's real shit to think about. That's why, dude, like, I love being an individual. I love the fact that people online hate my guts. I'm perfectly okay with that because I'm not trying to be like you and everybody else. I'm me, and I'm gonna die me. And the funny thing is, even as a kid in school, I was me. I was a loner. I was an outsider. I never tried to be in the in crowd. By the time I reached high school, I was pretty popular, but I didn't work for it. I didn't try to go for it. It just kind of happened. If it would have never happened, I wouldn't have gave a shit. I grew up in a basement playing Mario. Parents wouldn't even check on me. You know what I'm saying? And I was the perfect example. My father passed away, killed himself. You know what I mean? Grew up in a fatherless home. I grew up in a basement. I was antisocial. I didn't pick up a rifle and go kill multiple people. So, I mean, you know, like, everybody blames the weapon. Everybody blames NRA. But nobody's looking at the facts of the cultural issues at hand. Nobody wants to talk about that. And then nobody wants to talk about the fact that the left bullies you if you don't think identical to them. And yes, it's true. The right also, in their own ways, project their morality onto others, which I'm in disagreement with. I believe in live and let live. As long as you're not raping kids, you're not being a child molester, you're not you know, obviously a serial killer or serial rapist of any sort. And I think that you should just be left alone, because I actually do believe in the rights of the individual versus rights of the state. And that's something that everybody in this country has all of a sudden forgotten. It's not about the state no more. I mean, it's not about the individual no more. It's all about the state. It's all about the hive. It's all about the crowd. That's communism, bro. You know, it's just amazing to me, dude. You can raise age limits. I can take you into the ghetto right now in Jacksonville and show you how quick I can pick up a Glock for $100. But I'm not going to do that because I'm a felon. And the minute I actually show you how easy it is, you know, and chances are it's got bodies on it and it's a burner. But if I'm going to the hood for a weapon, that's what I'm going there for, right? Right. But no, the left are bullies, but so is the right in its own way. Just it's almost as if it's night and day, but in a lot of ways the same operation. But the left is actually more aggressive than the right. That's true. The left is far more aggressive. They merge it into schools. They merge it into colleges. They encourage your kids to be soft. And if you're not soft enough, then you get bullied for that. You know what I mean? Like, and just go on to any page, man, where the left basically bullies people. You'll see it for yourself. The same group of people that says, oh, bullying, we got to stop bullying. We even have a day for it at school where everybody wears pink to show that they're against bullying. But they're the biggest bullies of them all. To the point that they actually incite violence against people for voting for whoever they chose to be president. You get what I'm saying? That was okay. Mainstream media told you it was okay. Because if you actually voted for Trump, you're a Nazi. It doesn't matter that you're educated, that you're articulate, that you're a phenomenal person off the internet, in real life, that you actually probably help the homeless, do things for veterans, that you're actually a decent person with good morals. They don't care about that. Beat that Nazi's ass. Right? Isn't that what the left told you? And the media backed them up. The media told you it was okay to be Antifa, and Antifa's out there talking about I'm an individual. You're not an individual. You're just like everybody you're standing with. As a matter of fact, you all got your same costumes from H&M. You're not an individual. You're just like everyone around you. And if you're not just like them, then they're going to bully you. But nobody wants to talk about that shit. You know why? Because I'm not blowing gaskets. I'm not political enough for the conservative. Fuck you. I'm a human being. I'm an American citizen. I live and do whatever I want. I'm not hurting nobody. My daughter's considered Mensa. She's gifted. Extremely gifted. We're raising somebody that's going to be a productive member of society. You're welcome. I don't know. At some point, we've got to get back to the conversation of the cultural issues at hand. The fatherless home, the nuclear family that was dissolved at the hands of leftists, at the hands of liberalism. That's all I'm saying. You can blame it on everything. You can blame it on oxygen. You can blame it on trees being cut. You can blame it on whatever you want. You can pick an inanimate object and say that's why they're doing it. No, the truth of the matter is, why they're doing it is because there's a little chick running around on the internet talking about cash me outside. How about that? And everybody's like, oh my God, she's so cute. She's so great. Let's follow her. And she's got millions of followers. And she promotes ignorance. Blatant, dumbass ignorance. And everybody's like, oh man, she's so perfect, so awesome, so cool. I want to be just like her. Nobody wants to strive for greatness. Nobody wants to push themselves to achieve. Somebody says I'm no party. Exactly. I'm God's only man. You see this? I'm in this truck by myself. That's how I roll. My thoughts are my thoughts. I'm not telling you to think like me. I'm not telling you to be me. I'm just telling you my thoughts. I'm not even telling you how to live. I don't want to tell you how to live. I just think that we need to have a conversation about mental illness. I think that we need to raise awareness for mental illness. Nobody wants to talk about the fact that, you know, it seems like it was years ago that you heard about like little girls and boys cutting themselves. Everybody made jokes about it. Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And that was it. You know? Funny thing is, I know somebody's family member right now that's a cutter. And for all you false flag people out there about this school thing, just so you know, like the Meadow Pollock's father is actually friends with some of my family members. So I can tell you that really happened. I can also try to tell you that it was possibly facilitated by the fucking government and allowed to happen. Because they have been known to do that. How about that? But I don't know. Those are just my thoughts, man. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to tell you guys my words are holy grail or anything like that, but it's just, you know, we're all so focused on this inanimate object that doesn't have the ability to pull its own trigger. Instead of focusing on the man that actually pulled the trigger, or the woman that pulled the trigger, or the person, or the people. And that conversation needs to be had, because the government don't seem to be focused on it. You know what I mean? Like, the left doesn't seem to be focused on it. Let me tell you something. I grew up in the country. I had a gun put in my hand from the moment I could actually carry the rifle. I was out in the woods shooting birds, doves, whatever. You know, like with a 22 or a 410 from the time I was like before double digits. You know, so I grew up in a home where there was no locks on our gun safes. And the drawers underneath the gun safes were full of ammo. And I had access to it. So you can't tell me that guns are bad. You know what I'm saying? I get that my mentality, being that I was born and raised in the country, is different from that of, say, a kid that grows up in inner city Chicago. Our values and our morals and our perception of firearms and what they actually are used for and what they're worth and what they can do is totally different. And I don't like trap music, so chances are I'm not going to go shoot people down the street over a 10-pack of heroin. But again, that's a cultural issue, isn't it? Nobody wants to talk about that. You know why? Because that means you're pointing out people's faults. And people hate that shit. People hate it when you point out their faults. That's why a lot of people hate me so much, because whether I'm doing it like this or I'm doing it through comedy, it doesn't matter. I'm still pointing out people's faults. And those who feel like the shoe fit get butt hurt the most. And that's probably a good thing. I don't get butt hurt. I do. But not over like bullshit internet video stuff. You know? Unless it's World Star Hip Hop. Anyway, I'm going to get off of here and focus on driving. I just wanted to share that with you. Be a leader. Don't be a follower. Fuck labels. Get out of your box. And remember, bullying happens from usually the people who claim they don't bully the most. Take care.